Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, yesterday we talked a lot about the NFL Draft. We talked about the players that Brad Holmes added through these 7 rounds of the 2023 NFL Draft and how those players were going to affect the Detroit Lions in 2023. However, after the draft concluded, every general manager started making calls to the players that went undrafted, to the players that weren't necessarily valued within the top 256 players of this rookie class, but players that could still potentially make an impact on their team and potentially have a chance to make the roster. Now, Brad Holmes did a very good job of this a few seasons ago, finding guys like Jerry Jacobs and Brock Wright to make the team and impact the team over the last several seasons. And this year, I think he might have done it again. So today, we're going to take a look at the UDFA class of the 2023 Detroit Lions, take a look at all of them first, and then go note by the players who I think have a chance of potentially impacting the roster and making the final 53. So with that being said, let's get into taking a look at the Detroit Lions 2023 UDFA class. Now, as I said, we're going to go over everybody first, and then we're going to kind of go over and specify the players that I think are going to have a chance to not only make, but impact the roster immediately. Now, the Detroit Lions started off by signing Adrian Martinez, the quarterback out of Kansas State, Mohamed Ibrahim, the running back from Minnesota, Chase Cota, the wide receiver from Oregon, Keytaon Thompson, the wide receiver from Virginia, Galvin, the offensive tackle from Baylor, Ryan Swoboda, the offensive lineman from USC, Cecil, the guard/center from USF, Chris Smith, the defensive tackle from Notre Dame, Corey Durden, the defensive tackle from North Carolina State, Zach Morton, the edge rusher from Akron, Isaac Darkangelo, the linebacker from Illinois, Trevor Nowaske, the linebacker from Saginaw Valley State, Starling Thomas V, the cornerback from UAB, and Brandon Joseph, the safety from Baylor. Now, taking a look at, firstly, Adrian Martinez. Now, this is a player that started his career at Nebraska, ended up transferring over to Kansas State, and for a player that has a lot of the physical tools and a lot of the aspects you want in a starting quarterback, he never really seemed to be able to fully put it together at either school. In his career, Adrian Martinez has 9,752 passing yards, 51 passing touchdowns to 31 interceptions, but has nearly 3,000 rushing yards and 54 touchdowns on the ground. He is more of an athlete before he's a quarterback, but has showed the ability to play some really good quarterback at times too. Last year before his injury, he was completing 64.1% of his passes, threw for 1,261 yards, 6 touchdowns to just 1 interception. Now, Kansas State, of course, was a run-heavy team, and how could you not be with a guy like Deuce Vaughn in your backfield? But they really didn't pass a whole lot. But when they did, Adrian Martinez showed the efficiency that you'd want to see out of an NFL quarterback. Now, obviously, the quarterback competition for Detroit is not going to give Adrian Martinez a chance to start. Jared Goff was a top 10 quarterback statistically a season ago, and they just spent a top 70 pick on Hendon Hooker to be the backup quarterback. However, I do think Adrian Martinez could beat out Nate Sudfeld for the job. He is more athletic. I think he has higher upside. He's a flashy player. And although I don't think he's necessarily going to make the active roster, I don't think he'll make the final 53 unless Detroit ends up carrying 3 quarterbacks, which I feel is unlikely. I do think they could stash Adrian Martinez on the practice squad, a player that could potentially be a long-term developmental plan, a player that they clearly like after bringing him in for a top 30 visit, and a player that if Jared Goff gets hurt or if Hendon Hooker is not able to return immediately, Adrian Martinez is the immediate backup and a player that could improve the rushing attack, a player that, you could kind of build around some scheme options, build some read options around, build some quarterback runs around, and maybe even potentially use him in the same way that the San Francisco 49ers used Trey Lance in his rookie season, bringing him in on goal line packages, bringing him in on, certain QB run situations to help improve the numbers in the box and improve the run game. 3,000 yards and 54 rushing touchdowns is very impressive by a quarterback, and Adrian Martinez has the athleticism to be a really good rushing quarterback in this league, and if not become a starter, certainly become a very capable backup that's capable of winning you games. Now, moving on to the second UDFA player, Mohamed Ibrahim is one of my favorite running backs in this entire class. He is somebody that I had graded as a 7th round selection, mostly due to the injuries and the bell cow status, as last year he took on 320 carries for the Gophers, totaling 1,665 yards and 20 rushing touchdowns. He was named a first-team All Big Ten running back, and Mohamed Ibrahim, if it was 15, 20 years ago, would have been a first-round selection. He is somebody that statistically was one of the most consistent running backs in the Big Ten, over 1,600 yards and over 1,000 rushing yards in every season that he was a completely healthy back. He is consistent. He is a bell cow. He brings power. He has contact balance. He is an all-around really good running back, and he's a little bit undersized. He did have a really bad hamstring injury about 2 years ago, but last year showed that he still has a lot to give. Gave over 300 carries for the Gophers offense a season ago, showing that he still has that ability to be the bell cow, still has that ability to take on a large load management, and he's not going to have to with the Detroit Lions. But I think this is a player that is going to impress in the preseason. I think this is a player that is going to make the active roster as the 3rd running back, beating out Craig Reynolds, because I think he does everything Craig Reynolds does, just a little bit better. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mohamed Ibrahim has a 3rd down role, if he has a goal line role, if he has kind of the Jamal Williams role playing of being that short yardage back, being the touchdown vulture, right? Which is going to make a lot of fantasy players really, really mad. But Mohamed Ibrahim can do that, right? Has a nose for the end zone, 20 touchdowns a season ago. And I honestly don't know how he wasn't drafted. He was so efficient. He was so effective. And yeah, he dealt with a major injury and did miss a little bit of time this year, but played a large majority of games for the Gophers at running back last year. And just overall is a really good running back prospect. I think he ends up making the team as running back 3. Now, Brandon Joseph is a player that at one point was touted as a first-round selection. Coming out of Northwestern 2 seasons ago before transferring to Notre Dame, he had 9 interceptions in 2 seasons as a safety and looked phenomenal. In his career, totaled 159 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 10 interceptions, 7 passes defended, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Now, I had Brandon Joseph as a top 110 prospect. I had him as one of the best ball-hawking safeties in this class, somebody that takes the football away, somebody that is elite in coverage, graded as a top 3 coverage safety in all of college football over the last 3 years as of PFF. And is just such a good athlete, such a good playmaker. And the reason he went undrafted is I think that his tackling leaves a lot to be desired. I think that he's not necessarily a hitter, not a punisher, but you leave him in a deep safety role. You leave him 30 yards behind the line of scrimmage and have him just cover players deep, make up a lot of ground, and take the football away through the air. And Brandon Joseph, I think, is a top 10 safety at that in this NFL draft. I genuinely do not know how this man went undrafted, because he has the size, has the skills, has the ball skills and the ability to play the ball out of the air, has decent range, and of course had 10 interceptions in his 3 years of college football. This, I think, is the steal of undrafted free agency, and I would not be surprised if he ended up making the roster as the safety 4 in this Detroit Lions defense. He's great in coverage, takes the football away, and is a young option for the Detroit Lions to lean on for the future. And then Starling Thomas V. Last year was targeted 58 times at UAB, allowed a 20 2 completions for 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did not take the football away, but allowed just a 69.9 quarterback rating when targeted. Now, Starling Thomas is a scrappy cornerback. He is a physical cornerback. He has really good ball skills and the ability to take the football away. Didn't do it last year necessarily, but did have 2 interceptions the year prior. He's reminds me a lot of Jerry Jacobs, coming out of a relatively small school, didn't allow a lot of yards, didn't allow a lot of completions, allowed a very low quarterback rating, didn't take the football away a whole lot in college, at least Jerry Jacobs didn't his last couple of years, but was just kind of that scrappy physical man corner that's a little bit undersized, but just always is kind of in your face, always getting in the way and always frustrating the wide receiver. And a lot of people are incredibly high on Starling Thomas. A lot of people think he can end up making the active roster as the final cornerback, beating out Chase Lucas, beating out maybe even Will Harris for time on the field, and being one of the Brad Holmes draft steals. So with all that being said, that is the Detroit Lions undrafted free agency class. Again, they had a lot of big numbers. They had quite a few players come in, but I think Adrian Martinez, Mohamed Ibrahim, Brandon Joseph, as well as Starling Thomas are going to be the players that have the best chance of making the roster and have the best chance of kind of showing out and impressing at Detroit Lions minicamp and throughout the preseason. Those are your players to watch. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know down in the comments below if there's any other undrafted free agent that you're very high on, any player that we didn't talk about today that you think has a chance of not only making the roster, but potentially impacting the team in 2023. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say. With all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down below and subscribe. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions!